The morning sun crept over the horizon of New Eden, casting long shadows across fields of blue-tinged wheat. Jack Archer stood on his porch, inhaling deeply as he surveyed the farm he built with his own hands over the past decade. The sweet scent of alien flora mingled with the earthy aroma of freshly tilled soil, a constant reminder that this world, for all its similarities to Earth, was not the planet of his birth. Jack's calloused hand absently rubbed the faded military tattoo on his forearm, as memories of his former life flickered through his mind. 10 years ago, he'd been Captain Jack Archer, decorated veteran of the Terran Defense Force. Now he was simply Jack, husband to Maria and father to their teenage daughter, Zoe. "Dad," Zoe's voice shattered the morning calm. "Come quick. There's something weird on the newsfeed." Frowning, Jack strode back into the house. Maria and Zoe huddled around the holographic display in the living room, their faces etched with concern. "Unidentified vessels have entered the system," the announcer was saying, her voice tight with barely contained panic. "The Colonial Defense Force has been mobilized, but all citizens are advised to prepare for possible evacuation." The transmission cut out abruptly, replaced by static. Jack's military instincts, long dormant, roared to life. "Maria, get the emergency bags," he ordered, slipping effortlessly into command mode. "Zoe, help your mother. I'm going to check our defenses." As his family scrambled to action, Jack hurried to the basement. He keyed in a complex sequence on a nondescript panel, revealing a hidden cache of weapons and equipment he'd hoped never to use again. With practiced efficiency, he began arming himself. A distant rumble shook the house, followed by a series of explosions that grew steadily closer. Jack emerged from the basement to find Maria and Zoe waiting, wide-eyed with fear. "We need to move," he said, handing each of them a compact energy pistol. "Head for the shelter in Palmer's Canyon. I'll be right behind you." Maria gripped his arm. "Jack, what's happening?" He met her gaze, seeing the same strength that had first drawn him to her years ago. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever it is, we'll face it together. Now go." As Maria and Zoe slipped out the back door, Jack peered out the front window. His heart sank at the sight that greeted him. Sleek, obsidian ships filled the sky, raining destruction upon the colony. Beams of sickly green energy lanced down, vaporizing buildings and leaving smoldering craters in their wake. Jack's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The colony's defenses were minimal, designed to handle the occasional pirate raid, not a full-scale invasion. They needed time to evacuate, to get as many people to safety as possible. A plan began to form in his mind. It was risky, perhaps even suicidal, but it might buy the colonists the precious minutes they needed. Jack sprinted to the barn, where he kept his prized possession. A rebuilt Terran Defense Force skimmer, mothballed but still functional. As he fired up the engines, a piercing scream cut through the chaos outside. Jack's blood ran cold as he recognized the voice. Zoe. Without hesitation, Jack gunned the skimmer out of the barn. He found Zoe sprawled on the ground, Maria standing protectively over her with pistol raised. A group of alien soldiers advanced on them, their insectoid features contorted in expressions Jack couldn't begin to interpret. Time seemed to slow as Jack's training took over. The skimmer's weapon systems, nominally disabled, roared to life under his expert touch. Plasma bolts tore through the alien ranks, scattering them like leaves in a storm. "Get in," Jack shouted, bringing the skimmer to a hover beside his family. Maria hauled Zoe into the craft, and they were airborne moments later, streaking away from the farm as alien fighters gave chase. She twisted her ankle, Maria reported from the back, where she cradled their daughter. "Jack, who are they? What do they want?" "I don't know," he replied grimly, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that sent their pursuers crashing into the countryside. "But I aim to find out." As they approached Palmer's Canyon, Jack saw that they weren't the only ones with this destination in mind. A stream of vehicles and people on foot converged on the natural shelter, seeking refuge from the onslaught above. Jack set the skimmer down near the canyon entrance, helping Maria escort the limping Zoe to safety. Inside, hundreds of colonists huddled in fear, their voices a cacophony of panic and confusion. "Jack Archer," a voice called out. Jack turned to see Michael Chen, the colony's administrator, pushing through the crowd. "Thank God you're here. We're completely overwhelmed. The defense force is scattered. Communications are down." "I know," Jack cut him off. "We need to organize. How many people are unaccounted for?" As Chen rattled off numbers, Jack's mind whirled with possibilities. The shelter wouldn't hide them forever. They needed a plan, a way to fight back against an enemy they knew nothing about. "Listen up," Jack's voice boomed through the cavern, silencing the panicked chatter. All eyes turned to him. "I know you're scared. I know this seems hopeless. But we are not beaten yet. We are the people of New Eden, and we will not go quietly into the night." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jack saw fear in their eyes. Yes, but also determination, a willingness to fight for their homes and their lives. "We need to gather information, assess our resources, and prepare for a long fight," Jack continued. "This is our home, and we're going to defend it with everything we've got. Who's with me?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers echoed off the canyon walls as the colonists rallied around their unexpected leader. In that moment, Captain Jack Archer was reborn, ready to lead his people in the fight of their lives. As the impromptu resistance began to take shape around him, Jack caught Maria's eye. She nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the road that lay ahead. Whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together. The invasion of New Eden had begun, but so too had the awakening of its people and the spark of a resistance that would shake the very stars themselves. The resistance begins. The days following the initial attack blurred together in a haze of frantic activity. Jack Archer, now the de facto leader of New Eden's resistance, worked tirelessly to organize the survivors into a cohesive fighting force. Palmer's Canyon became their base of operations, its winding tunnels offering natural protection from the aliens' advanced sensors. Jack stood before a makeshift holographic display, studying the latest intelligence gathered by their scout teams. "They've established a perimeter around the main colony," he explained to the assembled group of resistance leaders. "Force fields, automated turrets, the works. But there's a weak point here." He pointed to a section of the map. "A blind spot in their sensor grid. That's our way in." Maria, who had taken charge of medical operations, frowned. "To do what exactly?" "We're outnumbered and outgunned, Jack. A frontal assault would be suicide." "Who said anything about a frontal assault?" Jack replied, a glimmer in his eye. "We're going to hit them where they least expect it. Guerrilla tactics, just like we used against the Centauri during the border wars." Zoe, her ankle now healed, leaned forward eagerly. "What's the plan, Dad?" Jack smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. In the past week, he'd seen her grow from a carefree teenager into a determined young woman, eager to contribute to the resistance. "We start small," he explained. "Sabotage their equipment, disrupt their supply lines, gather intel on their capabilities and weaknesses. We need to be ghosts, strike fast, and disappear before they can retaliate." Michael Chen, who had proven to be a valuable strategist, nodded in agreement. "I like it, but we'll need weapons, equipment. Our scavenged tools won't be enough against their tech." "Already working on that," Jack assured him. "Zoe, show them what you and the tech team have cooked up." Beaming with pride, Zoe activated a second holographic display. "We've been studying the alien weapons we've managed to salvage," she explained. "Their energy signatures are unlike anything we've seen before, but we think we've cracked the basic principles. Give us a few more days, and we'll have prototype weapons ready for field testing." A murmur of approval rippled through the group. Jack felt a swell of pride, not just in his daughter, but in all the colonists who had risen to the challenge, adapting their skills to their new reality. "All right, people," Jack said, clapping his hands together. "We've got work to do. Chen, I want you to organize the scout teams. Maria, make sure our medical supplies are ready for anything. Zoe, keep pushing on those weapon prototypes. The rest of you, start training everyone who can hold a gun. We move out in 48 hours. As the group dispersed, Maria pulled Jack aside. Are you sure about this? She asked, concern etched on her face. These people aren't soldiers, Jack. They're farmers, engineers, teachers. Jack took her hands in his expression softening. I know, but they're all we've got. And I've seen the fire in their eyes, Maria. They're ready to fight for their home. 2 days later, under the cover of darkness, Jack led a small team through the alien perimeter. They moved silently through the ruins of the colony, their footsteps muffled by the soft ash that blanketed the ground. As they approached their target, a massive alien communications array, Jack raised his fist, signaling the team to halt. He peered around a crumbling wall, his enhanced vision implant scanning for threats. 2 guards, he whispered. Zoe, you're up. Let's see if those new toys of yours work. Zoe nodded, hefting the sleek rifle of her own design. She took a deep breath, steadying her aim, and squeezed the trigger. A burst of crackling energy erupted from the weapon, striking the first guard. The alien let out a high-pitched shriek before collapsing, its nervous system overloaded. Before the second guard could react, Jack was already in motion. He closed the distance in seconds, his cybernetic leg enhancements propelling him forward with inhuman speed. A quick, precise strike to the alien's vulnerable neck joint, and the threat was neutralized. Nice work, Jack commended his daughter as the team converged on the communications array. Chen, you're on. Do your magic. Michael Chen, once the mild-mannered colony administrator, now cracked his knuckles with the confidence of a master hacker. He interfaced with the alien technology, his fingers flying over holographic controls. I'm in, he announced after several tense minutes. Uploading the virus now. This should scramble their comms for hours, maybe days if we're lucky. As Chen worked, Jack's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of approaching vehicles. We've got company, he warned. Time to disappear. The team melted back into the shadows just as a patrol of alien hover tanks rounded the corner. They watched from hiding as the aliens discovered their fallen comrades, the air filling with angry chittering sounds. Back at the canyon base, the Resistance celebrated their first successful operation. It was a small victory, but it kindled a spark of hope in the hearts of the colonists. They were no longer helpless victims. They were fighters, striking back against their oppressors. Over the following weeks, the Resistance grew bolder. Supply depots were raided, patrol routes disrupted, and precious intelligence gathered. With each successful mission, more colonists volunteered to join the fight. But the aliens were far from defeated. They responded to the Resistance's actions with brutal efficiency, increasing security and unleashing new, terrifying weapons. Casualties mounted on both sides, and Jack found himself haunted by the faces of those who didn't return from missions. One night, unable to sleep, Jack stood at the entrance to the canyon, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Maria joined him, slipping her hand into his. Credit for your thoughts, she asked softly. Jack sighed, his shoulders sagging with the weight of command. I can't help but wonder if we're just delaying the inevitable, he admitted. Every day, more of their ships arrive in orbit. How long can we hold out? Maria squeezed his hand. As long as we have to, she said firmly. You've given these people something to believe in, Jack. Hope. And sometimes, that's the most powerful weapon of all. As if in response to her words, a brilliant flash lit up the night sky. Jack's eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. Explosions in orbit, a battle raging above the planet. My God, he breathed. Someone's fighting back up there. As they watched the distant conflict unfold, a new possibility dawned on Jack. Perhaps they weren't as alone in this fight as they had thought. And if that were true, then maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance of winning this war after all. Unexpected allies. The orbital battle raged for hours, lighting up New Eden's night sky like a cosmic fireworks display. Jack and the other resistance leaders gathered around their long-range scanner, trying to make sense of the chaotic data streaming in. "It's definitely not human tech," Zoe declared, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But it's not the invaders either. Whoever they are, they're giving the aliens one hell of a fight." As dawn broke, the conflict above seemed to reach its climax. A massive explosion lit up the atmosphere, followed by an eerie silence. Tense minutes ticked by as the resistance waited for any sign of what had transpired. Suddenly, the scanner lit up with new contacts. "We've got incoming," Chen shouted. "Multiple ships entering the atmosphere. They'll be touching down just beyond the eastern ridge in about 10 minutes. Jack's mind raced. This could be their chance to make contact with potential allies, or it could be a new threat. Either way, they needed to act fast. "Zoe, Chen, you're with me," he ordered. "Maria, keep everyone on high alert. If this goes south, be ready to evacuate the base." Equipped with their best salvaged weapons and cloaking technology, Jack led his small team towards the landing site. As they crested the ridge, they saw 3 sleek vessels touching down in a clearing below. Their design was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Organic curves blended seamlessly with advanced technology, as if the ships had been grown rather than built. The ship's hatches opened, and Jack's grip tightened on his weapon as the occupants emerged. They were decidedly alien. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin and large, multifaceted eyes. But unlike the insectoid invaders, these creatures moved with an almost feline grace. One of the aliens stepped forward, raising its hands in what Jack hoped was a universal gesture of peace. To his shock, it spoke in perfect, albeit strangely accented, English. "People of Earth," the alien said, "we come seeking alliance against our common enemy. I am Ambassador Kylith of the Luminary Confederation." Jack exchanged stunned glances with Zoe and Chen before slowly standing, keeping his weapon lowered but ready. "I'm Jack Archer, leader of the New Eden Resistance. How is it you speak our language?" Kylith's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with amusement. "We've been observing your colony for some time, learning your ways. We had hoped to make peaceful first contact, but the Skithrax invasion forced our hand." "The Skithrax?" Zoe asked. "Is that what they're called?" The ambassador nodded solemnly. "A scourge upon the galaxy. They seek only to consume and destroy. We've been fighting them for generations, but never have they pushed so far into our territory. Your colony's distress signal drew both them and us here." Jack's mind whirled with the implications. "So, the battle we saw in orbit. Our fleet, engaging the Skithrax Armada." Sylith confirmed. "We dealt them a significant blow, but this war is far from over, which is why we've come to you. Your resistance has impressed us, Captain Archer. Few species have held out so long against the Skithrax with such limited resources." Pride swelled in Jack's chest at the alien's words, but caution kept him wary. "While we appreciate the compliment, Ambassador, how do we know we can trust you? For all we know, you could be competing invaders." Sheelith's expression shifted in a way Jack couldn't quite interpret. "A fair question. Actions speak louder than words, as your people say. Allow us to prove our intentions. We offer you advanced weapons, shields for your base, and intelligence on Skithrax movements." It was a tempting offer, almost too good to be true. Jack glanced at Chen, who gave a subtle nod. They needed every advantage they could get. "All right, Ambassador," Jack said. "We're willing to hear you out. But understand this, we'll be watching you closely. Any sign of betrayal, and our alliance is over." Kylith inclined its head in acknowledgement. "We would expect nothing less, Captain. Shall we discuss the terms of our cooperation?" Over the next few days, the cave base was a flurry of activity as luminary technology was integrated with their existing systems. Zoe worked closely with the alien engineers, her eyes shining with excitement at each new discovery. "Dad," "This is incredible," she gushed during a rare quiet moment. "Their tech is like nothing I've ever seen. It's going to change everything." Jack smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm, but couldn't shake a lingering unease. The alliance with the Luminary seemed almost too convenient, too perfectly timed. Years of military experience had taught him that if something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. He confided his concerns to Maria as they prepared for bed one night. "I can't put my finger on it," he said, "but something about this whole situation feels off." Maria considered his words carefully. "Your instincts have kept us alive this long," she said. "But Jack, we need this alliance. You've seen how much it's boosted morale. For the first time since the invasion, people believe we can actually win this war." Jack nodded, knowing she was right. Whatever his misgivings, they couldn't afford to reject the Luminary's help. They would just have to remain vigilant. The true test of their new alliance came a week later, when Luminary intelligence revealed a major Skithrax supply convoy approaching the planet. It was an opportunity too good to pass up, a chance to strike a significant blow against the invaders' logistics. Jack stood before the assembled strike team, a mix of human resistance fighters and Luminary special forces. The plan was risky, but if successful, it could turn the tide of the ground war on New Eden. "This is what we've been waiting for," he told them, his voice filled with determination. "A chance to show the Skithrax that we're not just going to roll over and die. That humanity and the Luminary, standing together, are a force to be reckoned with." As the team moved out, Jack caught Xylith watching him with an unreadable expression. The ambassador inclined its head in what might have been respect, or might have been something else entirely. Whatever doubts Jack harbored, they would have to wait. The battle for New Eden was entering a new phase, and everything hinged on the success of this mission. As he boarded the dropship with his unlikely alien allies, Jack steeled himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of two species now rested on their shoulders, and failure was not an option. The heart of darkness. The joint human Luminary strike force descended upon the Skithrax supply convoy with devastating precision. Luminary cloaking technology allowed them to approach undetected, while the weapons Zoe had developed using alien principles cut through Skithrax defenses like a hot knife through butter. Jack led the assault, his enhanced reflexes and years of combat experience making him a whirlwind of destruction. Beside him fought Xylith, the ambassador proving to be as skilled in battle as in diplomacy. Together, they carved a path through the Skithrax forces, pushing towards the convoy's command ship. As they fought, Jack couldn't help but admire the Luminary's combat prowess. Their movements were fluid, almost dance-like, yet lethally effective. It was clear why they had held their own against the Skithrax for so long. "Jack," Zoe's voice crackled over the comm. "I'm detecting massive energy readings from the command ship. Whatever they're transporting, it's not just supplies." "Copy that," Jack replied, ducking under a Skithrax energy blast. "Xylith, we need to get aboard that ship. Can your tech breach their shields?" The ambassador's multifaceted eyes seemed to gleam with anticipation. "Indeed, Captain. Follow me." With a gesture, Xylith summoned what looked like living metal, forming the shimmering bridge between their position and the Skithrax ship. Jack signaled to his team, and they charged across, energy weapons blazing. Inside the ship, they fought their way through twisting, organic-looking corridors. The ship's interior was hot and humid, reminding Jack uncomfortably of a massive insect hive. As they approached the central chamber, the resistance grew fiercer. Whatever they're guarding, they're willing to die for it, Jack observed grimly, taking down another Skithrax warrior. Finally, they breached the central chamber. What they found inside made Jack's blood run cold. A massive, pulsating orb of energy dominated the room, tendrils of crackling power extending from it like a malevolent web. "By the eternal light," Xylith breathed, its voice filled with horror. "It's a Nexus core." "A what?" Jack demanded, keeping his weapon trained on the writhing mass of energy. A weapon of unimaginable power, the ambassador explained, capable of tearing apart the very fabric of space-time. We thought they were only legends, but if the Scathrax have developed a working prototype. Jack's mind raced. This changed everything. No wonder the Scathrax had pushed so far into new territory. With a weapon like this, they could threaten not just individual worlds, but entire sectors of space. Can we destroy it? He asked. Xylith shook its head. Not here, not safely. The energy release would vaporize half the continent. We need to contain it, take it back to our scientists for study. As they discussed their options, a new sound filled the chamber. A deep, resonant thrumming that seemed to vibrate in Jack's very bones. The Nexus core's tendrils began to pulse more rapidly, and a holographic image flickered to life above it. Jack stared in shock at the figure that appeared. It was unmistakably Scathrax, but larger, more regal in bearing than any they had encountered so far. Its compound eyes gleamed with malevolent intelligence as it regarded them. So, the Scathrax leader's voice boomed, translated by their comms. The vermin have found our little surprise. I am Overmind X there, and you have the honor of bearing witness to the instrument of your species' extinction. Shalith stepped forward, its normally calm demeanor replaced by barely contained rage. Your madness ends here, X-Ther. The luminary will never allow you to use this abomination. X-Ther's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Oh, but my dear Xylith, you already have. Did you really think your precious confederation could have developed such technology on its own? Jack's eyes widened as the implications hit him. He turned to Xylith, seeing the shock and dismay on the ambassador's alien features. What is he talking about? He demanded. Xylith seemed to shrink in on itself. It can't be. Our leaders would never. How delightfully naive, X-Ther mocked. Your confederation has been dancing to our tune for generations, pushing the boundaries of science in directions that suited our needs. This Nexus core is as much your creation as it is ours. Jack's mind reeled. Had they been fighting alongside unwitting pawns of the Scathrax this entire time? He raised his weapon, torn between pointing it at the Nexus core or at Xylith. This changes nothing, Xylith declared, its voice firming with resolve. Whatever mistakes my people have made, we stand against you now, X-Ther. This weapon will never leave this ship. X-Ther's hologram seemed to grow, looming over them. Brave words, little ones, but ultimately futile. The Nexus core has already begun its activation sequence. Soon, it will tear a hole in reality itself, summoning our main invasion fleet. Your pitiful resistance, your entire species, will be but a footnote in the glorious history of the Scathrax Empire. The chamber shuddered around them as the Nexus core's energy output intensified. Jack knew they had only moments to act. Xylith, he barked, you said we can't destroy it safely. What about unsafely? The ambassador's eyes widened in understanding. It would create a rift in space-time, potentially destroying this entire system. But it would also prevent the Scathrax from using it. Jack nodded grimly. Sometimes you have to make a sacrifice to win the war. He turned to his team. Set charges, overload your weapons, anything that might destabilize that thing. We'll hold off the Scathrax. As his people worked feverishly to rig the Nexus core for destruction, Jack and Xylith fought side by side against waves of Scathrax warriors pouring into the chamber. Despite the ambassador's earlier revelation, Jack found he still trusted the alien in the heat of battle. If we survive this, Jack grunted between energy blasts, your people have a lot of explaining to do. Xylith nodded solemnly. Indeed, Captain. And you have my word, we will answer for our actions. Charges set, Zoe's voice called out. We need to go now. As they retreated from the chamber, Jack took one last look at the Nexus core. X-Ther's hologram still hovered above it, mandibles working furiously as it barked orders to its minions. See you in hell, Jack muttered, triggering the detonator. The last thing he saw before the blinding flash engulfed them was the look of utter shock on the Overmind's alien face. Then the world dissolved into chaos, and Jack knew nothing more. Race against time. Jack awoke to the acrid smell of smoke and the distant sound of alarms. His head throbbed as he pushed himself up, taking in the devastation around him. The Skithrax ship lay in ruins, great tears in its hull revealing the star-filled sky beyond. "Sound off," he croaked, relieved to hear the voices of his team responding one by one. Zoe appeared at his side, helping him to his feet. "Dad, you're not going to believe this," she said, her voice a mix of awe and fear. "Look." Jack followed her gaze and felt his jaw drop. Where the Nexus core had been, a swirling vortex of energy now pulsed, growing larger by the second. By the eternal light, Kylith's voice came from behind them. The ambassador looked battered but alive. "We've created a temporal rift. If it's not contained, it could tear this entire sector apart. Can your people stop it?" Jack asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be simple. Kylith's multifaceted eyes dimmed. "Perhaps, but not alone. We'll need help from every spacefaring race we can contact. And we'll need time." Jack's military mind quickly assessed the situation. The Skithrax will be back. They'll try to use this rift to their advantage, or at least stop us from closing it. We need to buy that time. As if in response to his words, the ship's remaining systems blared a warning. Multiple Skithrax vessels were entering the system. "We need to move," Jack ordered. "Back to the base. We'll coordinate our defense from there." The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. As luminary ships engaged the incoming Skithrax forces in orbit, Jack and Kylith worked to establish communication with every alien race in range. The message was always the same, a dire warning of the threat posed by the temporal rift and a desperate plea for aid. To Jack's surprise, the responses began to trickle in almost immediately. It seemed the Skithrax threat had not gone unnoticed by the wider galactic community. Promises of ships, resources, and scientific expertise poured in from a dozen different species. "I never thought I'd see the day," Kylith mused as they reviewed the incoming pledges of support. So many races, setting aside their differences in the face of a common threat. Jack nodded, but his expression remained grim. "It's a start, but will it be enough? And more importantly, will they get here in time?" The answer to that question came sooner than they'd hoped. The Skithrax, apparently recovered from their initial shock at the destruction of the Nexus core, launched a massive ground assault on New Eden. Their target was clear, the temporal rift. They must think they can still use it, Zoe theorized as they watched the Skithrax forces advancing across the planet. Maybe stabilize it somehow for their invasion. Jack's jaw set in determination. "Well, they'll have to go through us first." "Kylith, how long until the first reinforcements arrive?" The ambassador consulted a holographic display. "The nearest Allied fleet is still 6 hours out. We must hold until then." 6 hours. It might as well have been an eternity. But Jack had faced worse odds before. He turned to address the assembled resistance fighters and luminary troops. "I won't lie to you," he began, his voice carrying across the command center. "The next few hours will be the hardest fight of our lives. But what we do here, today, will echo across the galaxy. We're not just fighting for New Eden anymore. We're fighting for every free world, every species that calls this galaxy home. I ask you now to stand with me, one last time, against the darkness that threatens to engulf us all." A roar of approval answered him, human and alien voices united in purpose. As they moved to their positions, Jack felt a swell of pride. Whatever happened next, he knew these brave souls would give their all. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations as one of the most desperate last stands in galactic history. Wave after wave of Skithrax forces crashed against the defenders' lines. Jack was everywhere at once, rallying his troops, coordinating with luminary air support, and taking the fight directly to the enemy whenever possible. Beside him fought Zoe, her natural talent honed by weeks of combat into a lethal precision. Jack's heart swelled with pride, even as it ached at the necessity of his daughter becoming a warrior. Hours passed in a blur of constant combat. The defenders were pushed back steadily, fighting for every inch of ground. Jack lost count of the friends and comrades who fell, human and luminary alike. But still they held, their lines battered but unbroken. As the Skithrax prepared for what looked to be their final push, a new sound filled the air. Jack looked up to see the sky filled with ships of every description, a motley armada of vessels from a dozen different worlds. The reinforcements. Sylith cried, joy evident in its voice. They made it. The tide of battle turned in an instant, caught between the orbital bombardment from the newly arrived fleet and the reinvigorated ground forces. The Skithrax assault crumbled. As the last pockets of resistance were mopped up, Jack allowed himself a moment of relief. But he knew their greatest challenge still lay ahead. The temporal rift continued to grow, its swirling energies now visible even from the ground. Representatives from the various alien races began to arrive on the surface, each bringing their own scientific expertise to bear on the problem. Jack watched in amazement as beings of every shape and size worked together, united in their goal to save not just New Eden, but the entire sector. Tylith approached, its normally composed demeanor showing signs of straying. The rift's expansion is accelerating, it reported. Our scientists believe we have less than 24 hours before it reaches a critical mass. After that, Jack nodded grimly. Then we'd better make those hours count. What do you need from us? As Sylith outlined the plan, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The Skithrax had been willing to sacrifice everything to create this rift. Why? What did they know that the Alliance didn't? With the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Jack knew they were in a race against time, not just to close the rift, but to uncover the full extent of the Skithrax's sinister plan before it was too late.